Hello and welcome, I'm Kira Scrivener, and today we're going to be doing my period drama watch list. I saw this on Kate Howe's thing that she did all Victorian, and I love period dramas. I don't always love the movies or adaptations in which I have read the material first. I tend to like it better if I have no context of it and then I enjoy it. Let us go all the way back to 2001 and Heath Ledger and A Knight's Tale. Also Paul Bettany, all of these people that I remember are somewhat adapted from the Canterbury Tales and tell a story of a young knight, Will, who is squire to an actual knight, and then the knight dies and then he masquerades as it, and him and his buddies go through and they have to figure out all of the ways in order to do it. Geoffrey Chaucer appears as this ridiculous person who's the most hilarious comedian and ridiculous man ever, who, has to be eloquent and is often very, very drugged. It is more about capturing the vibe of that era than actually being true to everything that is true in that era. I really, really love is Belle. I haven't rewatched it in a long time, but I did watch it so many times as a youth and as a young adult. And I think it would still hold up, although I would love to hear the conversations on the race it deals with in then. But it is set kind of Regency era, and Dido Belle is a character who is a real life woman who was the ward of her grand uncle, who was the man who ruled on a lot of the slave ships and began the process that would one day lead to the emancipation of all slaves in the British Empire. And the ways in which she actually was involved in that or not, and in Lord Manfield's decision, is unknown. She's the first person of any Black ancestry to be put on the same level as another person who's white. So normally if there was Black people being portrayed in pictures or portraits, they would be below eye level. So as a order to show, hierarchy and stuff like that. And her cousin Elizabeth, who were raised together, are shown directly beside each other as equals, which is really important. A lot of people believe that Lord Mansfield and his discussion on slavery and stuff is why Mansfield Park is called Mansfield Park, because Jane Eyre is trying to make some commentaries on slavery and what line of business the Bertrams really are in. How much of that is speculation? We don't know, but there is a connection to that. Talking about a true Victorian period drama, we have Vanity Fair, a miniseries from 2018, I believe. It is absolutely delightful. I adore this series so much. I read the book first, got a little bit repetitive near the end and kind of lost my interest, and this managed to capture it in 8 episodes so well and humorously, and just the aesthetic, so perfect. See, I think most period dramas fall into the camp of movies I've watched over and over and over again, and Ever After is one of them. I have watched it so many times I cannot count. This is a retelling of Cinderella with, I was trying to remember Drew Barrymore's name and all I could think of was Danielle. And I think that this is a really, really well done Cinderella, and the romance is great, the characters are great, everyone has so much thing. I still quote all of the time, "I will go down in history as the man who opened the door," which is a quote by Leonardo da Vinci in there, and there's just so many fun Easter eggs and cool things and such great humor, and it comes around full circle so lovingly. A more recent one that I really, really love is The Last Kingdom. I adore it, and I can't wait for the movie, but the series is epic. I've rewatched the series several times, shown my friends, and I think it's just an epic series, and I think it gets better and better and better. Before I start discussing it, I will share the plot. The plot is about a young Uhtred of Bebbanburg who, I don't even know how to talk about it without giving a spoiler. I think the pilot and the second episode are such a grand job at introducing you to a character, changing the stakes, and showing the world so well. Even if you have no interest in the show, watch the first episode and tell me that it's not well done to do character development and how you should write character. Because Uhtred is born an Englishman, and we begin with his brother and him and his family and this young pastor who is trying to teach him things, and he ends up being submerged in more ways than one into unknown waters, and he ends up having to navigate that and change and decide in which era he wants to be. When The Last Kingdom shows the idea, in this era, all of England, all of the UK is all down to one city in Wessex. Everything else is being taken over by Danish people. So Wessex is the last kingdom, and we see the map being taken over by the Danes and stuff like that. And there's this war going on. So when we catch back up to Uhtred as an adult, we also follow Alfred and the ways in which they are on different sides and on the same side and how they come together. And they are such fantastic rivals and friends in the best way. If you enjoy those dynamics, you will enjoy the show so much. And the characters in which you begin hating end up being so lovable. But over the 5 seasons of the series, it follows about 40 years, I think. And all of the actors are played by the same actors, unless they were children at the beginning, and then like from the time that they're 18, they are played by the same actor. They do a very good job with making them look older without being like weird. Like sometimes you have to be like, okay, this person is supposed to be in their late 40s and this actor is very clearly in their 30s. But like they add gray hair and stuff like that and do a pretty good job. And yeah, I find it very believable, and I'm really glad that they kept the actors rather than recasting them when they're older, which I know is sometimes controversial, but I think these 5 seasons show such a great job. And there is a sequel movie coming over to wrap it up, and I'm kind of afraid because I don't want to say goodbye to this series I love so much. And then to go from a very long running show to going to one that was a miniseries that was just so well done. The Pursuit of Love, starring Lily James, is epic. I love Lily James as an actor. I think that she just blows me away in almost everything that she does, and this is no exception. It is so funny and well done and feminist and exploring these things, and the humor, the narration, it is impeccable. I hate describing things sometimes because I'm like, it's so well done, and yet all I can say is it's so well done. But this is a show that is really, really funny and shows these relationships between these two girls. The main girl, you would think of like a late flapper, like, you know, she's coming in the 1930s and stuff like that, coming from high society and yet, you know, being a little bit more free with her life, wanting to have all the romance and like the romanticness and aesthetics, stuff like that. Andrew Scott is in it being like the most gay painter, being like, I will show you the feminist way of painting. It's epic. It's really funny. And it just goes through a lot of her life. It also has the story of her cousin, and she is also the narrator as well, and she's named Fanny. And I wrote a poem about her because I love her so much, because she really talks about the opposite level of that, the more middle class, very, you know, conservative or more just distilled domestic life, and the ways in which like the 1930s is there, and these characters who still interact and have these things. It's one of those shows I finished and then immediately started rewatching and then made my roommate watch it. If you like period dramas, if you like nice British humor, you will really, really love this show. And then I went very, very classic with Anne of Green Gables. This is my introductory drug and everything that came. I'm showing my Anne of Green Gables collection that is quite large behind me. And Lucy Maud Montgomery really ushered me into reading. Anne of Green Gables was the first novel I ever read, and I watched this movie and love it. 1985 movie with Megan Follows. It's so good. It's 3 hours long and it is super, super well done. And the other movies in this series are okay, but I also wanted to recommend Road to Avonlea. It is almost impossible to find. You can't get it on any streaming account. You can't even get a lot of the box sets and stuff like that, which is really, really sad. I have to rely on the library or like really, really old pirated versions my parents had when I was a child. That is the only way I can watch it. If you have access to it, I think it is really, really worth the thing. It takes place in an Avonlea, which is anywhere from 10 to 20 to 25 years after Anne of Green Gables. I love the characters and their relationships, especially as we get later on in the series. Like Izzy, such a great character. I love Felix. I love Gus. I love Felicity, and the ways that they grow and develop is really, really nice. Kind of based on the story Girl and The Golden Road. And then we're going to circle back around to another Lily James property because she's perfect. And that is the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. I love this. I have read the book and I didn't love the book as much. This is a book that is set just after World War II, and it deals with a writer who has started writing like funny, humorous things as an old man, and we're also dealing with her grief as she lost her parents in the war, and she's fairly young, and her editor, who is just lovely, her best friend, and they have a great platonic relationship and stuff, and it's so good. And then she ends up finding this story about these people who live on Guernsey, which is an island in the British Channel, and the ways in which they were stuck and occupied during World War II. They were banned from fellowship and they were banned from getting together, but they had a book club in which they read stories, and like they read whole sections and then defended themselves. I've been trying to make book clubs happen ever since this, and I've had like 3 failed ones, and I'm still not happy about it. Okay guys, I want my real life book club in which we defend Jane Austen and all of the things, and this is just super, super lovely. And I think I think the stories and the history in it and the love story, all of it is really, really well done. I have a question mark after this one, but I wanted to mention it. I've probably not watched it in over 10 years, but it's The Illusionist, and the main character is Edward Norton, and it is set, I don't even know what era, but it's about this magician and stuff like that that is able to do illusionary things, and he's in love with a woman, and I remember loving it a lot as a child. Does it hold up? I don't know. I said 10 years, but like I'm thinking it's probably more like 15 years. I just remember thinking about it a lot. Last and certainly not least is Edgar Allan Poe Murder Mystery Invite Only Dinner Party. There's a really delightful miniseries on YouTube which looks at all of these authors who are not at all in the same era, really. Like they come from like, you know, Mary Shelley, who died in the 1830s, to Agatha Christie, who dies in the 1970s. It's a, you know, it's kind of connected, but they definitely don't all live at the same time. But they're vaguely Victorian, vaguely Edwardian, kind of in that era. And it is really, really cool. I guess we also have Ernest Hemingway in there, who also dies in like the 1960s, 1970s. Yeah, so there's definitely some disparity in age, but it is super fascinating to see them. Not all of them are necessarily completely accurate, but again, it's the vibe. Like, you know, the ways in which George Eliot shows up dressed as a man and is like, give me a voting booth. Like, she is definitely more, probably the most ironic, but we have Ernest Hemingway, who is like compensating with his like, all of his, here's a gun, here's a thing, I'm gonna go box someone. And it's just really funny, H.G. Wells being like a nerd in the background, which I think he was also less of a simple, cute man than that. I think he had quite a few lovers. Am I thinking of that correctly? Anyways, it is just a really lovely, funny story, and it's the vibe for people who love literature, not necessarily representing the characters completely, but it is super, super fascinating, and I think anyone who loves literature would have a good time with it, and it is very well produced as well, and the aesthetics are great, and the humor and the drama and the mystery are all very well done. And that is my period drama watch list. We have like a large expanse of books throughout the ages, but let me know if you've watched any of these or read any of the books in which these were based on. If you think I would enjoy any period dramas based on this or should go explore something, I am always good to hear favorite period dramas because I just have fun with history, especially if like the vibes and humors are there. I'm never really good. Like I watched the Jane Eyre from like 2012 and I was like, no, this is not my vibe. So like, not like somber things, unless it's like trying to say deep things. But like, I'm not really into like quiet aesthetic beauty. Like I'm always going to be the person who talks too much. So I need my shows to talk too much. If it has narration, I'm a sucker for anyone who narrates anything.